How can Afghani be described? He has been described as variously from the point of view, for instance, of his religious affiliation as a Shia or a Sunni, or in the with this religious terminology like revivalist, fundamentalist, modernist, or non-conformist. All these adjectives have been used to describe him in various studies, various books, especially on on the political Western writers as such. So you see, it is it is not possible to, because all these terms, for instance, fundamentalism or revivalism or etc., or even modernism, see, they can be used variously, and they are not mutually exclusive as such. Their meaning is overlap. So for instance, fundamentalism, this is the most popular and most misused word with regard to the Muslim religiosity as such. What was the concept of, in what sense you see he was fundamentalist as such? Now his definition of Islamic fundamentalism, varying emphasis on the revival of certain specific elements of Islamic vision and refusal to conform to certain traditional concepts, invite the application of all these terms variously or simultaneously. Afghani with his, well, let me see, tell you, see, that it was very difficult for me, it is very difficult for me to cover all important points with regard to Afghani's religious thought as has been dealt with in my book within 15 minutes as such. It is not possible, see, to speak only on, or to describe all the salient features of a subject, of a rather tough subject within 15 minutes. So you will excuse me if I, in order to meet to see the limit of 15 minutes or say 20 minutes, I have decided to read out certain portions of his thought from the book itself. And I have also been helped in this case for the selection of the topics by Usama, who had posed certain questions, that you should explain you should tell something about that. For instance, his being an intellectual of the East as such, or his concept of knowledge, or his suggestions, if there are any, of enabling the Muslim societies to face the present crisis. By present, I mean, you see, not only his present of the 19th century, but I think things have not very much changed since during the last 100 years. It is the same as the political threat of the Western countries against the Muslim countries, and of course the same ignorance or say inaction on the part of the Muslims to revise, you see, their legal systems, or to use, you see, the what Iqbal called as the principle of movement in Islam, that is ijtihad. So I will try to cover this. Now, so far as about his being a intellectual of the West, of the East. Now, he really, see, several times, especially in his fortnightly, Al-Uratul Uska, several times he has referred to this, that I always use the word East, and I point out about the problems of the East, the sufferings of the East on the hands of the Western powers. And if I refer more to Muslim countries, it is because the East, in the East, a major part of the East consists of Muslim countries. Now, I have one quotation I will read out. It is there on the back title of my book. He says, "O sons of the East, do you not know that the power of the Westerners and their domination over you came about through their advance in learning and education, and your decline in these domains? Make the effort to obtain knowledge and become enlightened with the light of truth, so as to recoup glory and obtain true independence." You see, this is why I call him, or he himself, has referred to East, and I call him as because his main emphasis of his whole thought revolves around the 2 points: Western exploitation, political exploitation of Muslim countries, and the failure of the Muslims to modernize scientifically or to learn modern sciences as such. Now about his main emphasis has always been throughout on achieving modern sciences, because that is the key to the progress according to him. And in that context, he criticized the ulama that they are not playing their part faithfully. Now he says, I quote, "The ulama have classified knowledge into two groups: Muslim sciences on the one hand and European sciences on the other. They do not realize that knowledge should not be judged by men, but men should be tested by knowledge." Then another criticism about the ulama is very significant, very significant. He says, the most curious thing about the ulama, this he was referring, he was writing this in an article during his stay in Hyderabad. Hyderabad has a very special place in his life. If time permits, then I will also talk about that. So he is referring to Indian ulama. The most curious thing about the ulama is that they go on reading Shams Bazaga of a philosophical treatise. They go on reading Shams Bazaga throughout the night in the light of a lamp, but not for once think why the lamp starts giving smoke when its chimney is removed, and ceases to do so when the chimney is put back. Now, clearly you see, Afghani was referring to a scientific theory by referring to smoking and non-smoking of a lamp as such. So what he was saying is that you are more interested in a book written 200 or 300 years before than, and you are ignoring totally what is happening around you in the field of science as such. Then you see and another very telling remark of Afghani, which shows, you see, his whole approach. In fact, you can also apply it to his religious thinking also. I quote, it is also with regard to knowledge. He says, the king of the world is science, and without it, kingship has never existed, does not exist, and will never exist. The Chaldeans, Egyptians, Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Europeans of modern age have all conquered lands and dominated the world, not because of their military power, but because of their sciences. The military, then he adds, the military conquests are not part of the French or the English. The military conquests are not of the French or the English, but it is science projecting its magnificence and glory, and ignorance has no other way except to admit its inferiority and servitude to science. Now, I think this is these quotations, these three quotations, you see, might help you to form a real the main spirit, or that is the main how to, that is you can define with these, you see, Afghani's place as an intellectual. Now, what the quotations, you see, they do not appear to be coming from a mullah or an alim, as it is known as in the traditional terms. It appears as if that a social scientist is speaking about the relationship between knowledge and power. And I think, you see, I don't think that there was any other Eastern philosopher or Eastern thinker, you see, who has said this in 1884, in 1881. I don't think so. And even in the West also. I do not think that anyone, you see, has defined this relationship as Afghani has defined it. Now, the other important point is that there is Afghani's intellectual response was governed mainly by the problems created by the political and intellectual thought of the West and its political forms. He probably did not think and proceed as he would have desired to do, but was forced by the immediate crisis to be selective in the ordering of his priorities. Nevertheless, his philosophical premises, scattered in his writings and recorded by his companions, and the practical steps which he took, provide us with his conceptual framework for reconstruction of Islamic thought. The most important feature of his approach is evident in the transfer of emphasis from abstract theory of Islam to Muslim society as such. It's a very important point. It was the material, that is political, social and economic decline and stagnation of Muslim peoples which had him to re-examine the philosophical content of those Islamic concepts which govern the political aspect of life. It is thus no mere accident that Afghani deals more with those Islamic beliefs and concepts which are directly or indirectly related to social realities than with Islamic metaphysics as such. Islamic metaphysics or mysticism or purely philosophical issues. Although he has dealt with all these issues. In fact, he was a strong critic of the philosophical systems of Muslim philosophers as such. This is another essay. And he has written an article during his stay in Hyderabad entitled Fawaid-e-Falsafa as such. And he was a believer, he believed that unless a community or a nation has philosophical spirit, ruh-e-falsafa, unless they have this ruh-e-falsafa, they cannot progress at all. And by the ruh-e-falsafa, not falsafa, but ruh-e-falsafa, philosophical spirit, that your ability to analyze the various aspects of a problem and go in depth to the causes so that you may then plan, for a sort of a plan for removing those difficulties or defects and marching, on, or taking a development course as such. The Muslim society as observed by Afghani did not consist of the rulers, the ulama or the rich. It was of the Muslim masses, the downtrodden majority at the mercy of the few rich and the powerful. This is another aspect of his thought which distinguishes him from other Muslim scholars as such. He found Muslim societies, whether in Muslim areas, that is the Arab countries or the Turkish countries or Iran, or areas of Muslim minorities like India, persecuted by the rich, the absolute monarchs, and the Western imperialists, and restrained in progress by the distorted image of Islam and intellectual backwardness. Muslim society, therefore, was stagnant due to three factors, namely absolute dictatorship, istibdad, distorted religious faith, and biased view, ta'assub, of knowledge, biased view of knowledge. These three, in his opinion, have no place in the Islamic view of life. Quoting the Quran and citing examples, examples of Muslim history, he condemned all forms of oppressions. He exposed the ignorance of ulama and their failing in their duty of providing guidance to the peoples. Thirdly, he brushed aside the traditional division of knowledge into Muslim and non-Muslim categories, an error which he said was responsible for intellectual stagnation of Muslims for the last 500 years. Such was Afghani's diagnosis of Muslim problems and identifications of those of those responsible for their creation. The question was how to deal with this complex question or this complex situation as such. Since the issues were of philosophical, political, and social nature with deep interlinked roots in the historical traditions, no single plan of action could have been effective. A man of action himself, Afghani knew it fully well. In his final analysis, which he appears to have made around 1884, when he published Al-Urwatul Wusqa from Paris, he selected the following steps in his plan of action. A theoretical statement. Number one, what should be done? To offer an interpretation of Islam, this is what the Muslims should do. Offer an interpretation of Islam through a critical examination of Islamic historical tradition, removing all theological impediments in the way of social and intellectual progress. Number two, to expose the distortions and misinterpretations in beliefs and practices in medieval Islamic theology and the misguidance of the ulama of his own age. Number three, to make the Muslims, chiefly the Muslim youth, aware of the urgent need of acquiring modern knowledge as an essential condition for progress. This was his, you can say, a theoretical sort of description. The operational side. He suggested to start a movement among the Muslims for the political modernization. Again, you see, I'm very wary of using, these terms because there are very vague terms, modernization, etc. For political modernization, and I've explained it. What did he mean? That is political modernization. That is establishment of constitutional governments instead of monarchy, and to shape Wahdatul Islamiyya. While the former, that is monarchy, etc., about the constitutional governments, this will provide popular governments. This will require popular governments for speedy reforms. And the latter, that is the Wahdatul Islamiyya, would help create an atmosphere of religio-political coordination among the Muslim countries for meeting European military threats and for united action for common social and educational reforms. So you see, his most important or very maligned kind of concept by the West was Wahdatul Islamiyya. This was the term which he had used and which was distorted by the Western interpreters as Pan-Islam. You see, Pan-Islam has a negative sense. That is, Pan-Islam means, you see, to a movement or a concept of which implies Muslim unity or against the Western powers, against the Western imperialists. His concept, you see, is mainly defensive. That is protectionist, you can call it. It is wanted to protect that is the protection of Muslim societies, politically as well as intellectually, both. So this Wahidatul Islamiyah meant that. In fact, it was sort of he was talking, you see, about a federalism, a federation of Muslim countries as such. Not, that is, he did not, in fact, that is by this his scheme of Wahidatul Islamiyah. In fact, he has made it clear that, of course, he wanted the establishment of a unity of Muslim countries, or a federal sort of a unity of Muslim countries at that time under some caliph. It could have been Sultan Abdul Hamid, this Turkish Sultan, and anyone else. He did not say that only the Turkish Sultan must be the caliph of this Wahidatul Islamiyah. So by Wahidat it means unity for progress, unity for educational development, scientific development. For that, you see, because nowhere, you see, he has said anything, you see, of attacking, you see, the Western countries, especially Britain at that time. He did. I think there is not a single reference to for any aggressive, for conducting any aggression against the West, or say military campaigning, etc. That was not his concept of Wahidatul Islamiyah. Now, you see, the pressures of Western imperialism, especially of the British, had become so intense that no long-term plan for religious reform and intellectual renaissance could be initiated without tackling the political question first. The West was ready to take advantage of the political dissensions among the Muslim rulers. Hence, Afghani advocated the establishment of constitutional governments in Muslim countries and appealed for the unity of Muslim countries under a single caliph. You see, both. First step was establishment of constitutional governments. And at the time, as you know, you see that the Muslim countries were were ruled by either monarchs or dictators as such. Well, see, for the Ottoman Empire or Egypt or in Iran, everywhere. So there was no constitution. In fact, see, when he was in Iran, he used to lecture to the common peoples, to the students, that appreciate the importance of the rule of law. Rule of law, कानून की हुकूमत. You do not, you till then you do not know कैसी नेमत है कानून पे के जरिए से हुकूमत के तहत रहना इसमें. So these are the first establishment of constitutional governments, which mean, you see, in the Quranic terms, that is consultative governments, which we call, you see, democracy, etc. now. But so far, if you take the Islamic term, it is shura, by that is governance through consultation as such. However, see, there were three chief obstacles in the achievement of Muslim Renaissance. A, foreign political pressures. B, despotism of Muslim rulers. And third, the Orthodox ulama, who, in order to safeguard their religious prestige and political influence, supported the reactionary policies of the rulers. Afghani found that the factor which would decide the decide the future of the Muslim world was the outcome of the struggle between enlightened Muslims, mostly under the influence of European sciences and institutions, and the orthodox section of the ulama. Both of them took the support of religion to put forward their conflicting points of view. Now, you will find, see, that this monumental task taken by him was the reconstruction of an Islamic theoretical system that could be effective enough to deal with the mighty, knowledge-driven political, social, and economic forces in the West. This situation still persists. Afghani succeeded to a large extent in the difficult task of redefining knowledge and not theology. Redefining of knowledge and not theology as the real means of making a society strong and progressive. According to this principle, a society is strong and progressive, to making a society strong and progressive. According to this principle, he advocated ijtihad as the legal instrument for keeping pace with the changing social and economic requirements from time to time. Democracy as the only right mode of political administration. Well, instead of democracy, you can say consultative government. Then socialistic economy to safeguard and promote a just society. This remark, he has also mentioned this principle. So, to safeguard and promote a just society, particularly the poor and the destitute. All this could be possible only when the members of society develop a philosophical spirit, ruh falsafa, and adopt rational approach towards life. For him, all these concepts were quite in line with Islamic teachings. It was this call for demolition of the old traditional structures and the building of new institutions and instruments that made Afghani the enemy of the religious leadership of his time. Muslim despotism, however, proved to be the main obstacle to his movement of change. Afghani remains as the only Muslim thinker of modern period whose concepts are still most relevant for Muslim societies on the path of cultural recovery. Now, see, we can say that he referred to ijtihad. Now, it is very interesting to see that he referred to a very important fiqhi usul, Islamic jurisprudential principle, or rather convention, whatever you call it, which is called talfiq. When he was in Cairo, he used to speak on various problems, social problems, economic problems, and also legal problems, because he was deeply aware of the crucial importance of reforms in Islamic jurisprudence, without which no progress was possible. So once, you see, he was explaining some fiqhi usul, some problem of Islamic jurisprudence. I have already mentioned that he used to sit in coffee houses and not in Azhar, Jamia Azhar, coffee houses, and he he was gathered to see about young scholars of including Sheikh Muhammad Abdu, who succeeded him, you see, in this later to strengthen the school of Afghani as such. So he was talking about some problem. Someone pointed out, you see, that the opinion which you are expressing is quite different from the opinion of Qazi Iyas. About, he was, I think, 13th century jurist, Muslim jurist. So they asked that your opinion is quite different from Qazi Iyas. He said, yes, it is different because Qazi Iyas formed his opinions on the basis of the knowledge which he had at the time and in view of the socio-economic problems which existed during his age. But my age is quite different from Qazi Iyas. My problems, social economic problems, are different from those of Qazi Iyas, and my knowledge is more than Qazi Iyas because more knowledge has been introduced during the last 200 years. So I am more competent to form this opinion, my own legal opinions. Another is a very important point is in this connection is that someone asked him which school of fiqh you follow, which mazhab of fiqh you follow. Now his response is very significant and very, very important, on which the Muslim societies today should consider. He said, I do not follow any one school. I select about a problem, I select the most proper opinion available in all the schools of fiqh, all fiqh schools. Now this is called talfiq. This is called talfiq. This is just a stage below ijtihad. That is, you search for your problems, not, for instance, that is, you should give up your allegiance to Hanafi school or any such Sunni schools, 4 Sunni schools, or even the 5th Zaydiyah school of the Shias. You do not, it is not necessary for you. It is not compulsory according to the Quran to follow any of these fiqh schools as such. So you are free to select, because there are opinions in these schools which differ on certain issues with each other. Even you see, Hanafi school. In Hanafi school, the Shaykhain, that is the 2 disciples of Imam Abu Hanifa, they differed drastically from the opinion of their teacher Abu Hanifa on several issues. So this is the, as I said, a state lower than ijtihad. Then you see, if you do not find even you see any proper legal opinion with regard to any issue in these available in these schools, then well, you have to go for ijtihad as such. Now, lastly, see, I will just say, to what extent Afghani succeeded in this mission of Wahidatul Islamiyah or empowerment of Muslim societies, of scientific empowerment of Muslim societies as such. Now he has himself, you see, in the last days, he has written a letter to one of his Iranian friend, and he says, you see, his disappointment and frustration, rather I would say, that he couldn't succeed in his mission as such. Now I will just read out letter because it's very important. Only on this account am I grieved, that I have not lived to reap what I have sown, and that I have not fully attained to that which I desired. The sword of unrighteousness has not suffered me to see the awakening of the peoples of the East, and the hand of ignorance has not granted me the opportunity to hear the call of freedom from the throats of the nations of the Orient. What would that I had sown all the seeds of my ideas in the receptive ground of people's thought. You, he was addressing the Iranian peoples, you who are the ripe fruit of Persia and who have zealously girded up your skirts for the awakening of the Persian, fear neither imprisonment nor slaughter. Strive with utmost speed and endeavor with the greatest swiftness. Nature is your friend, and the creator of nature your ally. And he makes last sentence a very telling sentence. He says, the stream of renovation flows quickly towards the east. So this is his last. So it was just, I do not know whether I have done justice to Afghani's thought as such, but since Usama was very insistent that I should send you a video there, for your. So that is what I have said. I do not know how many minutes it has taken me, and whether it is not testing your patience. Thank you.